Whether the dollar coin replaces the dollar bill depends on the reception it gets from merchants. So far, it seems to be off to a slow start. First Alabama Bank reports no dollar coin deposits or requests made by merchants, and many store managers we talked to say they haven't seen very many of the coins yet. Some merchants complain the coin is too similar to the quarter.
I do not like them.
Why?
They're too much the same size as a quarter. It'd be too hard to make change.
Go ahead.
You're liable to make a mistake real easily.
It may take some time for people to get used to the dollar coin, but one banker said the way things are going so far, the dollar coin could go the way of the $2 bill. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Miss you, but you know, if we come on back and be with us, we hope to work with you in every respect.
Thank you very much. I'd like General Gillum, who was with us. I don't have the words to say how honored still with us.
Striving for in this city, and I hate like the Dickens to present this to you because I don't want you to go, CD, but since I don't have a working
Bartenders like the convenience of pouring drinks from one bottle and not having several miniatures cluttering the bar. They also like the money they save. And at least one lounge owner says she likes being able to make a drink with 1 ounce of alcohol rather than the 1.5 ounces contained in miniatures. She says the drinks taste better without so much booze in them. However, she and some other bar owners are charging the same price for the weaker drinks as they did for the stiff ones. When the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board decided to allow bars to use big bottles, the belief was that bars would lower prices if they lowered alcohol content. Some bar owners say they plan to continue serving 1.5 ounce drinks. They say the bigger bottles still will save them money, and they believe their customers would rather get stronger drinks when they're paying the same amount of money. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
The State Board of Education was read a resolution adopted last month by the Mobile Board of School Commissioners, which endorsed the National Teachers Exam as a requirement for the teacher certification in Alabama. Currently, a bill rests before the Senate that would accomplish that end, but its passage is in doubt. For that reason, State Superintendent Dr. Wayne Teague suggested the NTE resolution not be voted on at this meeting.
I just think its timing is poorly to pass it today. Well, I'm in favor of it, and I think the board will eventually adopt the NTE, frankly. But I would ask you just to table it today for further consideration if that meets Dr. Gold or the board's approval.
Should the bill pending Senate action get defeated, this resolution would come back up for consideration September 20th. Earlier in the meeting, Board Chairman Harold Martin expressed concern over student drug abuse and suggested for the Board's consideration a one-time-a-year session for teachers familiarizing themselves with abuse symptoms. Martin says it's not only important to recognize the problem, but equally important on how to handle it properly with both student and parent.
I just wonder if it wouldn't be a step forward, that if one program a year and in service could be dedicated, could be not dedicated, but be a workshop or a program where teachers would recognize children or some of the characteristics of children who are over-medicated coming into their rooms.
With the Board's endorsement, Teague will look into possible designs for a drug recognition session. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Recommendations concerning in-service programs.
The court ruled last week that a Texas man who refused to give police his ID papers was not violating the law. Police use the method when patrolling high-crime areas here in Montgomery and at the scene of criminal acts. In Montgomery, Police Chief Charles Swindle says the ruling will affect investigations and training.
We still feel that this is the proper way to do it. I'm sure that the Supreme Court, in their decision, took everything into consideration. We hope they would, because we recognize the fact also that the Supreme Court does not have to live out here in these neighborhoods. It's being victimized by burglars, robbers, rapists. They live under a protective society, so to speak. But we still think that we have the right to ask a man what he's doing in your neighborhood at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in a suspicious manner.
Police officials say they are already at a disadvantage due to the numerous legal technicalities that contribute to the release of persons police say are guilty, and that evidence shows that the accused committed the act as charged by police. On another crime note, the FBI says Montgomery crime dropped by 8% for the first 3 months of this year, while the state's other major cities suffered increases, with Huntsville experiencing a 19% jump in its crime statistics. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
Finding a parking space in downtown Montgomery is anything but easy. Some people resort to using spaces that they're not supposed to, but they run the risk of getting a gentle reminder of the parking law. There are about 2,000 parking spaces downtown, and many of them are being used by employees of downtown businesses. Gene Reed of Downtown Unlimited says the problem is widespread.
I would say that 60 or 75% of the cars that are on the streets in the metered parking places in downtown Montgomery are occupied by cars of employees or people who are working downtown.
There is a solution, at least partially, to the problem. The city has okayed the use of 2 blocks of parking in this lot in front of Union Station, but you find very few cars using the spaces. Reed says the problem can be resolved through a concerted effort by downtown businesses and their employees. Some businesses are sharing the cost of off-street parking with their employees to free some of the spaces. And it should pay off. It's been estimated that a single parking meter is worth $3,000 of business per month to a store. That is, if the prospective customer can get to it. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
I could never believe before I came into the United States that the people of the United States are a little kind of patriotic. I think they are very proud of the history of the past 200 years, and they like to sing the national anthem. That would not be possible in Germany, but Germany has only the history of the last 30 years that they can be proud of, and so we wouldn't do that. And I hadn't known that before I came here.
There's a lot more friendliness in America, and it's you can meet a girl and you can talk to her at the same time when you meet her. You can't do that in Denmark because the girls are a lot more different. Over here, they're friendly.
Maybe they are only so friendly because we are foreigners.
Maybe, I don't know.
I think actually, for example, in Belgium, when I see a nice girl on the street and I would like to approach her, it will be, people who know him would say he's a bad boy, he's a playboy. But here, when I go here in the States and see a nice girl, I just, hello darling, come over here.
Police believe this man, William Eugene Culver, was one of the two persons who held up the Interstate Standard Station at the Fort Deposit exit of I-65 shortly before noon. The suspects escaped by car heading west, but an alert state trooper spotted the car on Snowden Chambers Road in South Montgomery County. Trooper Ed Maggart says he chased the car for about 6 or 7 miles at speeds of up to 120 miles per hour. But here on Whittley Road, the getaway car's engine blew and the vehicle careened off the road and burst into flames. One of the suspects, whose exact identity has not been established, was captured. The other escaped on foot into the woods. Dogs were brought in, as well as a state airplane to aid in the search. Law enforcement officials from the state, Montgomery, and several surrounding counties converged on the scene in a matter of moments, all of them heavily armed. Culver is known to most of these officials. He's been in trouble for the majority of his life. He is said to be armed with a pistol, which police say he knows how to use very well. Dave Rickey, WSFA TV News in South Montgomery County.
Last week, the Alabama legislature attempted to work out a compromise on Governor James's $1.2 billion education budget. The Alabama Education Association wanted some of the money for a teacher's pay raise, and the budget was amended, cutting $10 million from James's war on illiteracy. But the compromise collapsed, and neither the education budget or the teacher's pay raise bill was voted on. One person who didn't like the compromise is Montgomery Representative Alvin Holmes. Holmes says black lawmakers were not included last week when the compromise was discussed. He feels the AEA and its executive director, Paul Hubbard, have taken blacks for granted. If Holmes has his way, some black lawmakers who voted against the budget last week will vote for it this week.
Well, I tell you what, if the vote was taken today, I would switch my vote. If we was voting today, I would switch and vote for the budget instead of voting against it as I did last week. And I assume that there are other black legislators that will do the same. We don't like the way we were treated by AEA, and we don't like the way we were treated by the governor. Now, Cecil Wide, Representative Cecil Wide, and Representative Jimmy Holly, and Representative Roy Johnson are not the spokesman for black members of the state legislature. They have tried to be, and of course they're going to be in for a rude awakening when it comes Tuesday. However, I'm going to be against any budget submitted by AEA or anyone else that the budget does not have the kind of salary increases in it for the support personnel, the janitors, the maids, the cooks, and the bus drivers as they have for the school teachers.
Members of the Legislative Black Caucus will meet with Governor James Tuesday, and they will then decide whether or not to support the education budget. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
AEA Executive Secretary Paul Hubbard was hard at work Sunday afternoon planning strategy for this coming Tuesday, the day the Alabama legislature may again take up the education budget. Hubbard is trying to ensure a teacher and supportive personnel pay raise of 7%. At the moment, there's no provision for such an increase in the bill. There is, however, a plan to set aside money for a raise after paying appropriations and 5 schools.
There was a $12.7 million set-aside or surplus that would have priority over teacher salaries. And secondly, there was a provision in the agreement that said that all of the appropriations bill would be paid, all of the appropriations to 5 private institutions, Tuskegee and others, then any other measure that had appropriated funds that was passed by the 1979 regular session of the legislature. We find this part of the agreement, that is a $12 million surplus, and the other appropriations to be very unacceptable.
He refutes charges by Representative Alvin Holmes that the AEA and specifically Hubbard have overlooked blacks.
He has been invited to meetings, and other members of the Black Caucus, Representative Hilliard and Representative Langford here in Montgomery, both have attended and have participated fully in the discussions. I don't know why Representative Holmes did not come, because he was invited to come, and I would hope the next time he would come and avail himself of the opportunity of discussing any kinds of agreements that might be in the making, because we would welcome his participation.
Holmes says he plans to vote for the education budget. Hubbard notes that action could be politically dangerous.
We would hope that he would be sensitive to the fact that what we're trying to do is provide some kind of cost of living benefit to teachers and to some 20,000 support personnel, most of whom are black. or many of whom are black, who teach or who work in the Montgomery or other school systems. And many of these people live in his district, so we hope that he would not abandon them.
On Tuesday, the Alabama legislature returns from a long July 4th holiday to take up two of the most highly controversial issues it will face this year, the war on illiteracy and a pay raise for teachers. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
The record education budget was approved 94-10 without much debate. Shortly after the House convened, a long special order calendar was adopted, which did not include House Bill 386, the education budget. The House worked on the bills affecting local areas for a while. Then a motion in writing was made to reconsider the budget, which had been voted down just over a week ago. House Speaker Joe McCorkadale took the opportunity to come down from the rostrum to speak before the House. McCorkadale assured some House members that a House bill giving teachers a cost of living pay raise would be considered next. The Speaker did take time to talk to the House about its responsibility to pass a budget to fund education for the next fiscal year. With the compromising aside, the House voted to suspend the rules and pass the budget. The appropriations bill now goes over to the Senate for consideration in the remaining 6 days of the session. The Senate already is processing a version of the education budget. Debate on the teacher pay raise proposal slowed after a substitute was proposed, extending the 7% conditional raise to employees other than full-time teachers and support personnel. Later, that pay raise measure was approved, 96-7. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
While we can't see Skylab yet, it seems everyone is sure it's going to fall in his own backyard. In India, one legislator has proposed that the government repeal its prohibition on alcohol so everyone can have one last drink. In Arizona, a radio station is holding Chicken Little Day, in which everyone crowds under the transplanted London Bridge. And a West Virginia man says he's going to run to the mansion of Governor Rockefeller there because he's sure Skylab wouldn't dare fall on a Rockefeller. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
President, members of the council, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for having this bank in Montgomery. We found that we had a need for additional space here. We always have, and in the event Congress agrees, thankfully. So, Ms. Reynolds?
Mr. Gates, could you give me any kind of...
Yes, I want to ask one question. I'm sure you've been in this kind of business for some time. Wesley Johnson and Mr. Bill Cates will make the president region in the Union Station.
To Washington, the process is required by law.
County Montgomery, State of Alabama, transfer and raise deeds to the federal government. The fourth clause of the reform mayor of the city of Montgomery, he is hereby authorized for
Mayor Emory Fulmer and representatives of the General Services Administration signed the agreement this morning, which will hopefully lead to the renovation of Union Station. This follows more than a year of negotiations. Wesley Johnson, regional director of the GSA, says his agency is continually looking for similar projects.
We find it quite exciting just to go around and investigate and look for these historic structures to locate the federal family in.
Mayor Fulmer, what will the Union Station be used for once the renovation is complete?
Well, they will be for cultural, educational, and historical uses, and I think that the bounds are almost limitless.
This agreement is only the first step toward the actual renovation. The project must now be approved by Congress, along with several other renovation projects in other parts of the country. Approval is felt to be almost certain, though when it will be approved is anyone's guess. City leaders are hoping a renovated Union Station will be a catalyst for the improvement of the rest of the Lower Commerce Street area, providing a historic and economic revitalization of Montgomery's central business district. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
Attorney General Charles Graddick says by next week, investigators will be working throughout the state looking for welfare cheaters. Graddick made the comment following a speech to the South Montgomery Kiwanis Club. During his remarks, the Attorney General warned that welfare violators will pay a stiff price if caught.
We are after, and we're going to target those individuals that do not deserve to be on welfare, under the food stamp, or aid to dependent children, or whatever. If they're on welfare and they don't deserve to be, or they're defrauding you the taxpayer, we're going to see one of two things happens to them. We're going to see that they pay it back somehow, or we're going to see that they go to jail. And we're not going to play games with them.
Graddick also announced he will not turn over investigative files to attorneys for death row inmate Johnny Harris after Graddick's office challenged a court order to release the files and lost. The Attorney General noted problems recruiting employees, but said he did enjoy his job, even though there are some problems. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
Most Alabama colleges and universities are facing a zero growth rate. Alabama Commission on Higher Education Executive Director John Porter says some junior colleges already are feeling the pinch.
We may have some problems in the area of duplication of programs being more pronounced as the population of the student body perhaps decreases a little bit. And it's at a good time for the Commission in its work to be moving towards the elimination of those duplications.
Porter supports a bill that has passed the House and is in the Senate, which would give the Commission power to evaluate university programs.
AIC is empowered to make a study of all off-campus programs in post-secondary education, evaluate them. If they do not meet certain criteria, then they can phase them out. Now, what this does, it takes care of the greatest problems that we have in higher education.
Both Representative Pegues and Porter believe the bill and declining enrollment mean higher education in the state must improve in quality. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
The Senate came alive shortly after convening in a controversy over the trees and shrubs on the Capitol grounds. If that wasn't enough, one senator, who was concerned about the destruction of some trees and other plants to make way for renovation of the Capitol, became upset at interruptions during his oratory.
I'm getting steered up. I tell you what, you put on some pretty good shows up there, but I'm serious. And look at me in the eye, Mr. Miller. Look here, look at me in the eye. I want you to know, look. I want you to know I'm serious about this.
The Senate did approve a resolution expressing concern over the situation. Otherwise, the Senate began work on local bills. The Senate took a short break for a Finance and Taxation Committee meeting. The committee reported out a bill giving the state's financially troubled Medicaid system an extra $6 million for the current fiscal year. Meanwhile, across the hall, the House rejected the report of the Judicial Compensation Commission. That report said state judges should get a large pay raise. Under the Constitution, if the Senate does not follow suit and reject the report, it will go into effect automatically. Such a resolution is pending in the Senate. Perhaps in anticipation of the rejection, the House Ways and Means Committee voted out a bill giving circuit judges a $6,500 annual raise. District attorneys would also benefit because their salaries are tied to the circuit judges. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Culver was taken by police approximately 24 hours later and 30 miles north of the holdup and shootout scene. He was spotted by Montgomery police.
Officer Hicks arrived at the scene, observed the subject. The subject jumped off the bridge. Other officers arrived on the scene. He was apprehended lying on a trail near the railroad track on the bridge. The subject had been declared shot. The shooting was results of the shooting incident yesterday. There were no shots fired here today.
The 23-year-old Culver was then taken to Baptist Medical Center for treatment. Ambulance driver Mike Lussington talked with the suspect while en route to the hospital. Culver told of desperate hours in the South Montgomery County woods with 2 bullets in his back.
Well, he said that most of yesterday the law enforcement officers were all over him, and he tried to make it up the roadside and couldn't and fell. He had taken his shirt off to stop the bleeding, and he said that he didn't think he'd made it too far. He said he'd get up during the night and walk about 40 or 50 steps and pass out. The rain would wake him up, and he'd get up and take a few more.
Where was he wounded?
He had 2 bullet wounds in the back, towards the right side of his back.
Did he give any indication as to why he's living this kind of life?
No, he didn't say anything like that.
William Eugene Culver is no stranger to violence, and law enforcement officers in South Central Alabama say he's dangerous. State trooper records show the Lowndes County residents being arrested and charged with assault on a state trooper back in May of 1975. Trooper Captain J.W. Franklin has arrested Culver several times and was on the scene in '75 when Culver attempted to shoot another trooper.
In my dealings with him, and it's been, as I just related to you quite frequently, that I think he has never shown any compassion to me whatsoever for anything, and I have no doubts for what he would do.
William Eugene Culver's 24th birthday is next month. One Lowndes County man told this reporter today, so far Culver's life has been one filled with violence and turmoil. He was on parole from a 12-year prison term when the recent crime spree he's accused of occurred. Tonight, William Eugene Culver has 2 bullets in his back, he's under armed guard, and his condition is reported to be stable. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
After 5 hours of debate, the Alabama Senate passed the budget on a vote of 32-2. The only amendments which were adopted to the House-passed version were those added by the Senate Finance and Taxation Committee. The chairman of that committee, Senator J. Richmond Pearson, says the committee changes stand a good chance of being approved by the House.
We removed $135,000, which would have been duplication for teachers' liability insurance, and we inserted $250,000 for neonatal care. In fact, the amendments came to $1.5 million absolute and $1.5 million conditional.
The education budget now goes back to the House for concurrence. After its passage, the House bill giving a 7% conditional pay raise to teachers was brought up. It, too, was passed by a substantial margin. There were many other bills for the Senate to act on before they became difficult to pass in the waning days of the session, and, as rumored, the clock in the Senate mysteriously stopped before midnight to give the senators extra time to pass bills on their special order calendar. The Senate also passed a House resolution rejecting the report of the Judicial Compensation Commission. That report recommended substantial pay raises for judges. The House has included judges in a state employees' pay raise bill. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
On the state's highways this weekend, AAA estimates more than 25% of the stations will be open, but gas stations in cities will remain closed. Alabama gas prices have risen an average of 1.5 cents again this week, but the Southeast has lower prices than most places in the country, 4 to 5 cents lower than in New York. So when you're paying nearly $1 a gallon for gas, console yourself with this. In Europe, that gallon would cost you from $1.75 to $2.50. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
I think it's up very good myself. I'd have to say that I'm somewhat partisan, biased maybe, but I think he's been doing a good job with difficult problems. These problems have built up over a long period of time, particularly the problem of inflation and the energy, and of course the energy problem is feeding the inflation problem, and they're both great problems that didn't spring up since the president became president. He's also president at a time where there's still some distrust of public officials, a form of cynicism that really grew up out of the Vietnamese War and the Watergate. So some of that's still in the atmosphere, and it's not an easy time to be president. But I think he's doing a good job, and I think
what he's doing now is reassessing not only his own situation, but he's reassessing the national situation. Where do we stand as a nation? And where are we going as a nation? And what will it take to cause the American people to face the great problems that are there, that must be faced?
The Alabama House again adopted a long special order calendar. Before the House began work on that, a large number of local bills were passed. A conditional 7% pay raise proposal for state employees was brought up out of order and passed with only one dissenting vote, that of Representative Alvin Holmes of Montgomery. Holmes said the state employees in his district worked for his opponent in the last election. One bill carried over in the House from Wednesday as unfinished business would allow municipalities to buy into electrical generating facilities. The bill's sponsor, Representative Joe Carruthers of Dothan, says electrical bills could be lowered because of that. Eventually, the bill passed. The Senate, where the education budget lies, passed a local bill setting up a dog racing commission in Barber County. That bill now goes to the House for its approval. The Senate delayed work on the special order and the education budget, which is on that special order calendar. The delay came in the form of a filibuster over a bill indefinitely extending the time allowed for a person to bring a personal injury lawsuit from exposure to chemicals, radiation, and asbestos. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Mr. LeMaster.
Mike.
.77 aspens and Valaris have rusted through prematurely. In some cases, with as little as 18 or 20,000 miles on the cars. The consumers are complaining of serious holes in the fenders that ruin the value of the car.
Chrysler says all car manufacturers have trouble with rust, and the company doesn't think there are any special problems with its Valaris and Aspens.
We don't feel that all the fenders on the Aspens and Valaris will rust. It's a localized problem in some areas. And where we do hear about it, of course, we arrange through our zone office to go out and inspect the vehicle, even though the warranty might have expired, and we'll make an adjustment or whatever has to be done at that